Hey guys, and welcome to our new channel. We're starting out on this new adventure as a way of just sort of documenting our process through homesteading life. So my name is Jeremy, this is my wife Cassandra. We have 3 kids and we live out here on what we call SeMoJo Homestead. We are located in South Carolina and just a small family homestead. We work and do this kind of, I guess you could say, part-time. We do not do this full-time. I own my own business, and so that is definitely my full-time occupation. And Cass homeschools our kids and works at their dance studio and stuff like that, so she definitely has a full-time schedule as well. So we do this while balancing all of that. And so what we want to do and what our goal is to, one, kind of document our process for us and for our kids, and also just for you guys, but also just to show that you can do this. You can live this kind of self-sustaining lifestyle without having to give up everything. And so we want to bring you guys along. We've been out here for about 3 years, but only doing homesteading for about 2, and really kind of jumped into it in the last year. And so Cass is going to tell you a little bit about where we come from and how we got out here and how we got started with all of this.
Yeah, so I grew up originally in Northern California in a big ag community, and we always had a garden and trees and fruit trees, nut trees, all of that on our property. So I grew up with the opportunity to go out in my yard and pick food, and it was amazing. And Jeremy always had kind of an urban garden of sorts at his house as well. So getting married, we of course started our own little garden in our at our house, and then we ended up getting into a patio home and did square foot gardening there. And as our family grew and our desires to cook our own food from our own products that we grew, we as those desires grew, we really wanted to find more land. And so that's kind of what started our journey. And so we found 5 acres. What we fell in love with about the property was the woods. So we actually only ended up clearing 1 acre, and that has our house as well on it, obviously. So we don't actually homestead on the 5 acres. We actually only homestead on a little over 1 acre. Our animals are in the woods, so you'll see that. But yeah, everything we do is on the little area that we cleared, and then around that cleared area. So we don't need a lot of space to do what we're doing. It's just doing what we can with what we have right now.
Yeah, and that's our big thing, is really just educating, and I guess our desire and even probably passion would be to just show people that you can do at least a little bit with where you're at now. The biggest thing is just, start somewhere, with something. She had mentioned we were in a patio home for a while, and I mean, that was a small garden. I grew up in definitely more of an urban area, so we always had kind of a small backyard garden. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to kind of bring in some food during the growing season. Out here, we are blessed enough to have enough space to bring in enough vegetables to pretty much supply that through the year for us. And we'll do a little tour in a second, but we'll show you the garden, and all of that is grown within about an 1,800 square foot garden. So big for a backyard garden, but not huge by any means for kind of what you would maybe think of as a homesteading big vegetable garden to supply all the food and everything. Yeah. And so the other thing that I think is important is we've kind of allowed this to develop and grow with us. In other words, we haven't forced anything. We haven't felt like we just jumped in unprepared, except for one thing. We'll talk about that. But I think that's important. I think that when people think about or want to get into homesteading, they kind of have this romanticized idea of, like this beautiful farmhouse and rolling hills and, like just going out and relaxing every day as you walk through your garden and overlook the pastures and stuff like that. But reality is that's not really the case. No. There's a lot of like just kind of dirt and grime type work that takes place. So because of that, I think it's very, very important that you don't get in over your head. Allow it to grow at whatever speed you are comfortable with.
Yeah.
You know, if that means you're just starting with a couple of vegetable plants, fine. Maybe the following year you add a little bit more or whatever. And that's really what we've done here for the most part. And it really has made it enjoyable. And we have almost never felt overwhelmed. There are definitely times where you kind of feel overwhelmed, which is where channels like this have really come in and helped us. You know, there's some YouTube channels out there that we really follow, and really just seeing someone else doing it for me is enough to encourage me and just kind of give me that extra push of, you know what, like, this isn't the end of the world. It may not be a fun season right now, but we can get through this. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I really am thankful that we do this, even in those hard times, because there's just something that doesn't compare to the feeling of just kind of that reward when you're sitting down at the end of the day and you've made a meal that is nearly 100% from your land. And so that to me is very rewarding, and kind of why I continue to do it and what motivates me. So I know we didn't plan this, but why do you do it?
Honestly, there's been a lot of just getting back to living simply, and living simply so that we can rest and live life abundantly. That's really what has motivated me. There's just this peace and joy and rest that comes with this lifestyle that we've kind of stumbled into, been led into. And those moments when the goats are kicking me on the milk stand, or, you know, the crops aren't growing the way I wanted them to, I always go back to that, like, yes, every journey has some hiccups and some, you know, rocky ground, but ultimately I find joy in this. I find that this simple living, this simple lifestyle has brought space for joy and rest into my life. And so that to me is why I keep going and why I do it.
Yeah, I think that's good. Good analogy there. Rocky ground.
Yeah.
There are definitely times where you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, like it's rocky ground. But I mean, in gardening, like when you run across that, then, you know, you got to cultivate it.
Yep.
And you've got to be patient a lot of times to kind of work through those rocks, get those rocks out of there, and end up with a good end product. And I think that's key, is just staying motivated. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do with this, in sharing our story and kind of, like I said, documenting our process through this, is that we can be kind of that motivation or that encouragement for others out there. So anyway, it's enough about that. Let's go do a tour.
Yeah.
We're going to take you guys around,
our
show you kind of, how we have
farm.
it laid out and what we have going on here, the animals and the garden and stuff like that. Let's go look at everything.
Yeah.
So come on. So this is behind our house. This is our backyard. And what we did, I think we hinted at it before, is all of our animals are kind of at the edge of the woods. Our property goes way back into the woods, but we kept kind of the cleared area for more of our yard space, garden space, stuff like that. Animals get in the woods. One of the reasons we did that is because here in South Carolina, summers can get pretty hot. So that's just one way that we kind of help keep the animals, give them an option to cool off, is just keeping them in the shade. They all do have little sunny spots that they can get into if they want to, but we have found that keeping them in the woods really does help to keep it a little bit cooler for them. It also makes it easier for us to go in and maintenance, because we're not out in the sun trying to like clean out pens or whatever like that. So here's our chickens, and we do have a rooster in there. He may start crowing, I don't know. But anyway, so we do have them in a pen back here. They used to be full-on free range out in the yard and everything, but we do have 2 dogs. And one thing I forgot to mention before is everything that we bring in on the homestead, our rule is it has to serve a purpose. So while our dogs are pets, they are also kind of the protector of the property, if you will. They help to keep the deer away, any of the other kind of pests, garden pests that come in. They also help to keep predators away. They did a great job of that for about the first year that we had chickens. Even a story of one jumping in and catching a hawk that came down on the chickens and got the hawk off of them. But then they started trying to play with the chickens, and chickens and dogs don't really play very well together. So our solution after a couple of losses was to enlarge their enclosure, kind of go back in the woods with that, and just keep them in here to where they can be safe from the dogs, but also predators. They are at the edge of our dog's boundary, and so the dogs are still very aware of what's going on back here and just are able to get close enough and bark enough at night if need be to keep anything night predator wise away. There's a lot of cover in here, so they do have protection from any hawks that may come into the area, ways to get kind of out of sight and hide underneath stuff. The other benefit of having them in the woods is that we left a lot of the fallen trees down. What that does is gives a place for bugs to kind of harbor in, but the chickens go in there and start scratching them up and eat them. So it encourages foraging and encourages the bugs to come in so that they can be foraged by the chickens. And that's just been really good. It gives us kind of just a peace of mind because we were big on wanting free range chickens. And so this is kind of the next best thing since they have to be locked up. So anyway, that's the chickens. Next, we will head over to the rabbits.
So we do have rabbits. We have meat rabbits. These are New Zealand white rabbits. And we originally got rabbits because we did want to start providing some protein. They're low maintenance and they're also the easiest to process. So it was just kind of a jumping off point. It goes back to what we were saying about like, make sure you don't bite off more than you can chew. Make sure it's something that you can handle. We felt like rabbits were something we could really manage time-wise and just through learning. You know, we could basically learn with them. And it's really nice because our kids love these rabbits. They have really bonded to the parents. We did really make sure they knew not to bond too heavily with the babies, but they've really enjoyed having them and they help with them. So our kids are learning how to care for them and raise them, and so we think that's a really important skill for them to have as well. So these are our rabbits. He's getting pretty warm, so I'll probably put him back. They are also in the shade. We originally had them in rabbit tractors, but it just gets too hot. So we have them now up in cages in the shade so they can be okay with this heat. The other thing that's really great about rabbits is obviously they're small, they're quiet, and you're allowed to have them in most urban areas, obviously. So it's a great livestock option for those who live in city limits and can't have other livestock, or are worried about maybe things being noisy for their neighbors. Rabbits, obviously, you don't have that problem with any of that. Also, the other great thing about rabbits is their manure is awesome for the garden. It's a cold manure, so you can put it right on your garden. It doesn't have to compost down. And we have seen such an improvement in our garden since we've been using it. Another manure that is cold is goat manure. And here are our goats. So we're kind of going in order of what we added animal-wise to the farm. We started with chickens. That was our gateway animal. And then we went to our rabbits. And then we were watching all these homesteaders with dairy goats. So I had to get a dairy goat. We opted for Nigerian dwarf goats. They are smaller, so they require less space. And also it's the only goat milk I tried at a farm, and I knew that I would drink it. I knew my kids would drink it. It's a really sweet, thicker milk, so it tastes really, really good. And they're just easier to manage. Also, they're great companion animals. I love hanging out with them. They're super fun. They're full of entertainment and personality. And they add a lot of fun to our farm for sure. We have 3 does in milk, and that supplies enough milk for us to make cheese, drink the milk, make yogurt. We've made frozen yogurt, we've made ice cream. Hey, this is Esther. She's like one of my favorites. They're all kind of my favorites, but so yeah, only 3 does in milk and we have what we need.
So those are Cass's favorite animals on the homestead. I'm gonna show you my favorite animal. This is an animal that we never really thought that we would ever have, but we got a phone call from a friend Easter weekend, and he knew a guy that came back from vacation and found this guy's mom dead in the field. He was only about 3 weeks old at the time, and the farmer did not have the time to milk this guy back to health. So they were desperately trying to find somebody to take him on and could just devote the time into making sure he was going to be okay. So they called us and we said yes, and one day later on Easter he showed up at our homestead. So he is our cow, and we're gonna walk into this bin and try to find him. I think I know where he is. He has a favorite spot. This guy we weren't really prepared for, like I said. So thankfully our friend allowed us to keep the trailer until we could get a temporary place set up for him, and then we set up a temporary 16 by 16 enclosure that would allow him just to get comfortable with the area until we could get his bigger pen built. As you can see, he also is in the middle of the woods. He has a lot of forage out here. We do have to provide hay because we don't have pasture. So here he is. So he is a Gelby, which is a dual breed, but obviously, as I'm saying he will only serve us one purpose. So here on the homestead, we have what we call permanent residents and temporary residents. And this guy is a temporary resident. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But we have really enjoyed having him, and I think this guy has convinced us that we will probably continue to do a cow a year or so in the future. This has been a learning experience for sure. We were thrown into it and kind of learned as we went, but he has done a really good job. We had to teach him to take a bottle because he was on his mom, and we got him to do that and then got him weaned. He is now completely off of milk and 100% on solid food. And so one thing with cows is they are a herd animal. We are very much aware of that. So we do try to come out here, spend some time with him every day. We even let him out on a regular basis, just kind of walk around the farm and go up to the other animals and stuff like that. He gets his little social hour where everybody else has to stay in their enclosures or their pens. And that has really helped. We also have a cat that likes to meander in and out of his area and kind of hang out with him. So he is very happy, very healthy. And like I said, we love having him.
So this is our milk house. We are directly across from the entry to our kitchen. So we situated it here so that we could quickly get the milk and get to the kitchen and take care of everything. That's cutting out extra time. We also have a culinary herb garden right here close to the kitchen, and we have a tea garden. The fun thing about the tea garden is that our kids come out and they know they can pick anything in here and make their own tea concoctions. So we've really enjoyed having this, and it beautifies my milk house. I call it my milk house because I do all the milking, and this is kind of my sanctuary. I come in here and I have some fun lighting at night and can just hang out with my goats. So goats are escape artists. That's Emily Rose. She's saying hey, she wants some food, some treats. But we knew we needed to have an entrance into the goat pen. We knew we needed to have a milk house, and we knew that we needed to have a way for us to get to them without them escaping. And so this just made sense for us to have this door into the milk house, and then we could just let the goats in and milk them and then put them out, and this door would keep everyone from escaping. It's worked out really well. It's been functional. It's been easy. This is super easy to clean. It's just been a really simple, nice layout for milking and for tending to goats. The stand is right here, so if we need to do anything medically, we have everything that we need right here. This is our milk house. Those are the goats. Next, we're gonna go to the garden.
One thing you may have noticed is we don't really have a barn area. Each place, like the cows got an area like a barn shelter if we ever needed to get in there and kind of keep him closed in into a shelter. The goats, as my wife said, the milk house kind of acts a little bit as that. That was kind of our birthing center when they gave birth as well. So just really trying to turn things into a multi-purpose, because right now we don't really have the resources to do a full-on barn. So just kind of getting creative with ideas like that. But we came over here to talk about a garden. The garden is right down from where we were, so still right outside our kitchen door. The driveway runs in between the house and the garden. I think that's important because one, it's easy access, and two, it's in a highly visible area, which just kind of keeps it on the forefront of our mind. It's easy to notice, like, okay, we might need to water tonight because things are looking really wilty, or whatever it may be. And so I think that's really important with your garden, is keeping it in a high traffic area that you're going to be passing by, that you're going to constantly be thinking about it, and also keeping it as close to the house as you can, just to make it easy. Ours, the way we have it set up is we did this really cool bean tunnel, which we got the idea from one of our favorite YouTubers. We did this as the entryway into our garden. Really cool. This is the first year we've actually had it, and I really like it. It kind of makes it fun going in, you know, like even if you're kind of like, oh, gotta go do garden chores, this sort of lightens your mood just because it's really cool to walk through, really fun. I don't know if you can get the full effect on video, but we're gonna walk through it. Over here we have cold frames / raised beds. That's where we do a lot of our root vegetables. We're able to kind of keep that soil nice and loose and have a little bit better control on that. They're also heavier feeders typically, so we're able to really focus on keeping the fertilizer, manure up in those beds and stuff. The cold frames, basically what we do, we have old windows that we can lay on top. So if we ever do get one of those really cold nights here in South Carolina in the winter time and we've got crops in there, put that on it during the day. It heats it up enough to keep it warm enough at night so that everything in there doesn't freeze. So as we walk through this tunnel, one thing I love about it is these beans. They're easy to find and they're tasty. So we found this door, cut it in half. Again, just kind of make it cool, beautify it a little bit. One thing is, since we're trying to maximize our space with useful food and stuff like that, we really did also want to make it as beautiful as possible, you know, take advantage of that. I'm a landscape designer, so I can't have an ugly yard. But anyway, if you want to come on in. So this is our garden. This is the 1,800 square feet, roughly. We do the black weed claw because last year we lost the battle with the weeds, and gardening last year was miserable. And so this year, again, another idea that we picked up on YouTube, covered everything with the black, and it has been a game changer. Gardening this year has been so much more fun. We are in between crops right now, so there's not a ton going on. Stuff's kind of worn out right now. We're at the end of the summer. We did this weekend plant the second round of squash, which here in South Carolina, our growing season is long enough to be able to squeeze in one more of those. And we also put in a lot of our brassicas that we're gonna be growing through the fall, like cabbage. We planted rutabaga seeds and collards and stuff like that. Got broccoli that we got to get started and stuff. So we have strawberries kind of right here in the front corner. Big rosemary plant mixed in with it. That is a companion plant, kind of helps keep some of those pests away. We also grow cucumbers, okra, peppers. We have melons this year that we did. Tomatoes, asparagus in that back corner because that's a permanent bed. And then, like I said, squash. And we have beans on the trellis. One thing that's important, especially if you have limited space, is be wise about what you grow. You want to grow things that you know you're going to use, that you may be comfortable cooking with. Every now and then we will kind of experiment. The melons were actually an experiment for us this year. We never really grown them. We tried them last year, weren't really successful, doing a lot better this year. But for the most part, we just try to stick with the staples. And that way we can produce more of those types of food and be able to preserve them. And that's how we kind of get through a year with our vegetables. Also on the outside, between the garden and the driveway, you can see we've got grapevines. So they kind of line the driveway as you come in onto the property. And those have been really successful. Again, they look a little right now because the June bugs have been eating on them some, and just at the end of the summer, but we got a great harvest off of them this year. This is the third year we've had them in the ground. So this is the first year we've really gotten a good harvest off of them. But I think that's it for the garden. We're gonna head right across the driveway, and Cass is gonna talk to you about our orchard, which was actually the very first thing that went in on this property.
Okay, we just left the garden. It's right across the driveway, and we are now at our orchard. As Jeremy said, this is the first thing we put into our property. We knew that the fruit trees needed more time, so we got it in quickly. It is super hot right now in South Carolina, so I'm gonna head to the shade. As we're walking towards the shade, just take a look behind me. So I call it an orchard. That's what it started out as. we're actually kind of transitioning to more of a food forest. Last year, we had lots of blackberry bushes just randomly pop up in the ground. And so we cultivated that and we got a lot from them. And so organically, it just kind of became more of a food forest-ish than an orchard. So this year, to kind of encourage that idea and use the space, we added more berries and we added sweet potatoes. We have blackberries, raspberries, and goji berries. And then fruit tree wise, we have pears, we have apples, peaches, pomegranates, and figs. And a persimmon, which I don't think we've gotten a persimmon yet, but they are still young trees. So the other thing you might see is lots of flowers. My oldest daughter loves wildflowers and she really wanted to plant her own bed of cut wildflowers. So we gave her space in this orchard area so that she could kind of do her own flower garden. And she's loved it. And I love having all the flowers. So this right now is our front orchard that will be transitioning even more to a food forest.
So that about wraps it up for the tour. Our dogs are hanging out with us right now, so who knows what's gonna happen. This could get interesting.
They found something in the woods.
Yeah, you can meet our dogs. They didn't make the video. Hey, Peanut.
Butter. Yes, our dogs are named Peanut and Butter.
Yes,
our
they
children
are.
did that.
Yes, they are. Definitely intentional. But anyway, that wraps it up for the tour. We will be putting up some videos going more in detail about some of the stuff we talked about. Our intent is not to make everything educational. Again, it's just to sort of like share with you guys our journey and everything. So yeah, who knows? We got some ideas for our videos, but who knows where this thing's gonna go. We just thank you guys for joining in with us and watching. You know, I think, again, the big thing for us is just encouraging you guys to start at whatever level you feel comfortable doing. You know, when you get out and, you know, you're doing some things that help to provide food for yourself, there's something about that. I truly believe that is what we were created to do. You know, when God created people, he put them in a garden and they were to take care of that garden. And I think homesteading is one way that we just kind of get back to that. You know, growing your own food, having your own animals, raising your own animals, learning all this. It's good. It's good for the earth, I believe. It's good for just your psyche and good for the soul. And so wherever you are, in whatever conditions you have, just remember, start where you are.